I'll try and speak louder. Let's see. There we go. Okay, so how many of y'all are with VR already? Okay. Who's not with VR? And yes, TWC, Vocational Rehabilitation Services. Okay, where are y'all from?
Client Assistance Program, Disability Rights.
Oh, okay, great. Great. And same? Okay. So I'm sure the majority of you are familiar with the VR services, but just an overview. So the purposes of our services are to obtain and maintain, help people with disabilities obtain, maintain, or advance in. Advance in is one of the new things that WIOA added to our requirement. So we'll take that into consideration in helping them find employment that's consistent with their strengths, interests, abilities, and aptitudes. The VR program is an eligibility-based program, and the services are tailored to each individual. That includes pre-employment transition services. They're not intended to be emergency services. They're not time limited, but they're also not intended to be long-term. And they're arranged and provided by a vocational rehabilitation counselor. So we have TVRCs and VRCs. TVRCs are our transition vocational rehabilitation counselors, and they are assigned to various schools and will likely spend the majority of their time in those schools. The VRCs are counselors that usually have a general caseload but may also have some high school assignments. The majority of the schools have a counselor that is assigned to them, and if you need more information on who that counselor is, if you are working in a school, if you get contacted by a school, you can contact the regional transition program specialists. VR has eligibility criteria, the first one being that they have to have a physical or a mental impairment. The second criteria, that impairment needs to create an impediment to employment, and it's because of that disability that they're not able to obtain, maintain, or advance in employment. The customer will require VR services in order to obtain, maintain, or advance in employment, and the customer can achieve an employment outcome unless pre-eligibility trial work experiences demonstrate a clear and convincing evidence that the customer cannot achieve an employment outcome because of the severity of their disability. VR transition services are provided to help students move from high school to successful work and independent living. Through partnerships with schools, VR provides these services to students while they are attending high school, so they will be prepared when they exit. After a person leaves high school, VR services are still available should they need them. And transition services is a subset of VR as a whole and are usually provided to individuals aged 14 to 24. WIOA gave us some new definitions of a student with a disability and youth with disability. Many students with disabilities were leaving secondary school without competitive integrated employment or being enrolled in post-secondary education, and so there was a need to support such students as they transitioned from school to post-secondary life. Title IV of WIOA changed the way that VR provided their transition services. As you're aware, we are required to spend 15% of our funding on pre-employment transition services to students with disabilities that are eligible, as well as those that are potentially eligible. Pre-ET services are intended to provide exposure and to the concepts and experiences related to building skills for work and independent living, and are therefore more effective when they're started earlier. So we're trying to develop better ways to coordinate with the schools to get students into our transition services earlier, starting at age 14. That way, once they are exited from high school, they'll have a good plan in place and good services in place to help them with their employment or post-secondary goals. So one of the new eligibility statuses is those, yes.
Can I get you to back up? Pre-ETS services, to the kinds of services?
Yes, I'll get into that.
Okay, thank you.
So WIOA introduced a new eligibility status, the potentially eligible. This is a means to give access of pre-employment transition service activities to some individuals that meet the potentially eligible. To be potentially eligible, you must meet the definition of a student with a disability, which is they have to be 14 to 22 and are currently enrolled in an educational program, whether it be secondary school, post-secondary school, and they have to be eligible for or receiving special education or related services under the Federal Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, or as an individual with a disability for 504 services. These pre-ET services for potentially eligible is not intended to circumvent VR services or to keep them from going through the VR process or providing them services earlier. It's a means to identify these students and have these services available to them. That way we don't create another barrier. If additional services are needed, then they'll go through the VR process and apply for services. Because as long as they are in potentially eligible status, they can only receive pre-employment transition services. So what are the pre-employment transition services? So we have the core 5, which are career exploration, work-based learning, counseling on post-secondary opportunities, job readiness, and self-advocacy. So as an agency, one of the big ones that we've done is the Summer Earn and Learn program, or SEAL. We're about to start our second year this coming summer, and it's a work-based learning activity where we contract with the workforce boards or work with the workforce boards to find work sites and provide a work learning experience for them. They'll be provided with work readiness training to help them kind of get an idea of what it would be like to actually go into work. These are for students, so they likely have not had a job before. So we provide that training to help them prepare for the experience. Then they'll actually work for a 5-week program, a 5-week placement at a job with any additional supports that they may need that we can provide to them. So how many of y'all are transition counselors or participated in the SEAL program last year? Okay. Do y'all have any feedback that you can give on y'all's experiences? Stop. I feel your pain. Yeah. So it was the first time we were doing it last year, so we're trying to learn and create better avenues and better planning. Is there anything that you all would recommend that we can improve on to do it better? What have you all been experiencing?
Feedback. I just suggest that you start planning in advance because there were quite a few very disappointed students this last summer.
Okay. That's a good idea. So, yes.
The school systems have developed some really good skills as far as getting parent buy-in for a lot of their programs. I mean, they've got it. They've been working at that for a long time. And some of the feedback I give you, at least from the East Texas area, one of the things I heard from students was getting the parents to participate. Mom and dad are busy trying to get to work themselves without taking their child to work. And so a lot of times the issue was parents and transportation, at least in rural East Texas.
Right.
And so I think we need to get better at how to get
parent buy-in.
That's really and it's a tough one.
Right. And they're students, so it's kind of reliant on the parents. Yes.
Okay. So number one, the communication with the counselors. So everybody, all the counselors that I work with and know, at least, were more than happy to speak and explain any accommodation needs, explain what's an appropriate or inappropriate site based on the person's goal or disability. And we weren't communicating with it at all.
Okay.
Reaching out, emailing, calling.
And that was with the workforce boards that were planning the sites? Okay.
I would say, I don't even need to go in, you all know what happened.
Right.
So, that's one, so a communication with the counselors. Then it was also, I let my parents know from March, and then when it became June, it was like, you have to do the application, well, near June, okay, now send this application, and then we'll see if you can be a part of it. Okay, so I've lost, like,
Months.
that way.
Right.
And then it was like, okay, you have to go to this orientation, it's mandatory. Lost people that way. And then you gotta go to this other one, it's also mandatory. You said the other one was mandatory, lost people that way. So it's just like so many hurdles we're putting these families through. They have jobs, lives, and other kids to think about.
Right.
So
Right.
hurdles, we need to
So,
move forward.
are there any planning activities that y'all have been involved in this year going forward? Like, who's your workforce board that y'all are working with? I'm sorry?
Nobody's working with us right now.
Nobody's working with us right now, no.
Okay.
We had one training where they said they were gonna do summer learn again, but we haven't heard anything since, nothing in writing, and we're envisioning the worst.
Okay.
And so far, she's been engaged in trying to find some work sites and
Okay.
contracts that they could so forth. But last year, there was only two sites that had to go on one
Hmm.
so there were three that go but the other three are two. One was someone else's anyway, they worked at the library there, and the library was so
Okay. So thank you all for the feedback. This is good for us to know. Did you all find that y'all were able to communicate with these potential employers that had with, or it was mainly? Okay. 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 So we'll see what we can do this year, but I'm going to take it back to them. One of the other programs that we're developing is a student hireability navigator. I think this will kind of alleviate a little bit of that planning issue once it's actually put in place. Essentially, it'll be a person that has a VR background that will be housed in the workforce boards to better help coordinate activities that we're trying to have students do and that they want to tap into other workforce services. That way they can have a better understanding of disability and what kind of additional supports. That I am not sure of, but they're not a workforce board employee. So I'm not entirely sure how they will classify them. But the intention is to help with the planning and to help better communication and coordination. We also have some other summer activities, hopefully that will be coming up. Explore STEM to help students access other programs that involved around science, technology, and engineering. So those are being worked on as well. And then we have our contracted services, work experience services, and other services that qualify as pre-employment transition services that are available and don't require that you go through a workforce board or any other person. Yes?
I'd like to make one other suggestion is that when you're developing these resources and these courses, that you give them on a local SharePoint so that those of us in a specific region can access them ourselves and look and see what is suitable for our clients. All my clients are in Santa Fe. All hers are, you have Harris County, half Galveston County.
Right. So now that you mentioned that, And that's a great idea. We do have a current pre-employment transition services SharePoint for the contracted pre-employment transition services. Have you all been able to access that and use that? Okay. Yes. So how to get started, how to get a student started with our services. It's the same process we use for any customer that's interested. Have them call our office, get them set up with initial contact. If they say they don't necessarily want to apply for services and just want to participate in SEAL or in one of the other pre-ETS programs, then they would be kept in that potentially eligible status or that initial contact without case assignment. Counselors will schedule an appointment with them either at the school or a workforce office or VR offices to complete the application for services, and they'll discuss the eligibility process and VR process. Again, if a student does not want to apply for services, but they do want pre-ed services, we don't have to make them apply. They can be in that potentially eligible status as long as they want to. One of the other things that WIOA is having us do is provide career counseling to those that are receiving subminimum wage. Are any of y'all the liaisons or the point of contacts for 14Cs? No? Yes? How's that going? Okay. Okay. You have a large sheltered workshop. Okay. So, I'm sorry? Okay, nice. That's a good number. So the purpose of that was to also provide another avenue for individuals to go into competitive integrated employment if they want to. So there's various groups within 14C that are required to have career counseling. Those that have been in a sheltered workshop and have never worked before or want to. Those that are younger than age 25 and will be starting work in a sheltered workshop for the first time. And then another subgroup that I'm not entirely familiar with. So our system, our rehab work system, is now able to help us track that career counseling and help document that we are providing that. Even though we are not required to make the outreach, it's on the sheltered workshop employer to make that outreach to us, we still want to do our due diligence and show that we are available to provide services for those that want to go into competitive integrated employment. So these are the current regional transition program specialists. Currently in Region 4 and Region 6 there are vacancies, but I'm sure y'all are familiar with your own program specialists in your region. If you ever need assistance, you don't have to just contact them. You can contact any of them. You can also contact our state office program specialists, and this is their contact information. Okay. Do y'all have any questions? No? Fantastic.
So, could you
Yes.
step back a minute and
Yes.
talk about the 14C folks? What, from the standpoint, what does a counselor have to document with a 14C?
So there's a set curriculum that was developed by Sarah Kendall. She's our state office program specialist for subminimum wage and for Social Security benefits. That essentially goes through what is competitive integrated employment, what skills, kind of work readiness training with them as well, and some career exploration to see if they would be interested in, and an overview of VR services to let them know that we can help them with that should they want to move forward and search for competitive integrated employment.
So there's a very specific
Yes, and it's not a very lengthy curriculum because it's a brief introduction into VR and to let them know, hey, there's other employment opportunities out there should you ever want to explore those. We are required to provide counseling annually for one of the subgroups. It's 6 months after the first one and then annually thereafter. So, like I said, we have capabilities of documenting that and making sure that we are keeping up with our end of the requirement.
Is the counseling you just described that you will provide to them, does that happen once a year, one time only?
Yes, that initial career counseling, yes, it's only required to be provided once a year. If a person says that they are interested in looking at jobs or doing some further career exploration, then we'll walk them through the VR process with us and go through VR services.
I understand clearly, as far as you or TWC is considered, that constitutes counseling.
The,
One-time visit.
the career counseling, yes. WIOA states that annual career counseling must be done. Now, if they say that they want additional counseling or they want more information, we're readily available. Any additional questions?
And the groups, again, the groups that 14C applies to.
So those that are currently making subminimum wage and have been making subminimum wage, those that are younger than age 25 and will be making subminimum wage for the first time, as well as I think those that are over the age of 25 and are considering going into a sheltered workshop for the first time as well.
Okay.
So the younger group, they're a subset. There's kind of broken down into two additional groups in that they are required to apply for VR services, and they will be required to have career counseling 6 months after that initial one and then annually thereafter. Even though they're required to apply for VR services, should they say that they don't want to continue with VR services, we cannot make them continue with services. Additional 14C is a complicated one, and that one's that we're still learning as well and kind of getting updates from the feds on that as well. And Sarah Kendall is a great resource for that if you have any additional questions. And if you would like her contact information, see me and I'll definitely give that to you. Okay. Any other questions about WIOA or anything like that? No? Then that's all I got for today. If you have any questions or need any assistance, especially those of you that work with TWC VR, please feel free to reach out to me. We're a resource, and if you need anything, we're here.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Do you have any shelter workshops that aren't interested in having you guys come out of the?
Yes, there's quite a few that aren't interested, but they don't have a choice. Yeah. Based on feedback that we've gotten from around the state, there were quite a few employers that were very hesitant in us coming in and providing this. So it was a rough start in the beginning, but most of them have adjusted and don't see it as a problem. There are actually quite a few, because of the career counseling that we started providing, have decided to stop paying subminimum wage and are now paying minimum wage. So that's been a positive outcome. Mm-hmm.
Folks, any additional questions? Elsa, want any more feedback from Summer Learn and Earn?
Yes, if y'all have feedback, send it to me, please.
Okay. Any additional feedback from Learn and Earn to make it more successful this summer?
Yeah. Yes, sir. I'm sorry? Yes, so one of the programs that we're working on developing is supposed to be a year-round program. We're working with the ISDs and the education service centers in each region to get that set up, and hopefully we'll have that in the upcoming school year. So if y'all have ideas, send it to the PREET's mailbox, because we definitely need those.
Elsa, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay,
Very good.
here you go.
Alrighty. And I could get your microphone.
Yes.
Very good. We are set.
Yay.
Okay.
Is this the clicker?
You bet. Does it work? Check it. Let's see.
Is it on?
Let's see what we got here. Here we go. Good.
Is it working? Okay.
Folks, we'll go ahead and get started. I'm very pleased to present one of my graduate students, Ms. Malia Stewart, who is also worked as a deaf and a hard of hearing consultant, primarily working with adolescents in rural East Texas. I tell the grad students, I say, hey, the reason we're doing all these presentations in class is because when you get out of here and you're practicing as a rehabilitation professional, you're going to be doing presentations. Bingo.
Here I am.
So I'm very pleased to have Malia, and she wanted very much to talk to me about working with adolescents who are deaf and hard of hearing, particularly in a rural setting, because guys, that's East Texas is rural. Okay? And in fact, our rehab counselor training program focuses on rural rehabilitation. So, Malia, thank you very much.
You're welcome. All right, so I'm going to be speaking with you guys about my experiences and some things that I think you all will. A little bit louder? Are we? Okay, I'll try. All right, I'm going to be speaking about my experiences working with deaf and hard of hearing adolescents, what I've experienced over my couple of years teaching as an itinerant teacher, and some things that just made me think of, wow, in my future as a rehab counselor, I think will benefit me, and I want to let you guys know because it could benefit yourselves as well. A little bit of history about me. I graduated with my bachelor's in deaf and hard of hearing from SFA. I am a certified deaf education teacher. That means I am qualified to teach grades K through 12. My current caseload, I teach ages 3 through 17. I work at the Nacogdoches Regional Day School Program for the Deaf. We have 6 teachers. 3 of them are placed in the schools, and those who need more intensive services like self-inclusion, they need to be have some sign support in the classroom. They go to Nacogdoches School District schools where our deaf and hard of hearing teachers are, so we can provide those supports for them. And I am one of the itinerant teachers, so I go out to the surrounding districts that our program works with, and I have roughly 21 students on my caseload. So I travel out and I see each of them once a week for 45 minutes. I'm currently, as Dr. Weber said, a graduate student for rehabilitation counseling. I just wanted to lay out for you that these are some of the things I'm going to talk about. And after each of these topics, I'm going to give you my implications of what you might use this information for in rehab. So I wanted to start with one of my biggest pet peeves that some teachers will tell me is, well, they hear me just fine. And that is always misconceived as they understand you, and they might not understand you. They can hear the sounds, they know you're talking, but do they understand what you're saying? So I wanted to give like a visual representation of that. I wanted to start with a more mild loss. So a mild hearing loss, this is called a speech banana. Has anybody seen a speech banana before? So not everybody. I will describe the speech banana first. So you can see this banana shape right here. Do we all see it? Okay. Sorry, my teacher's coming out. These are all letters from the alphabet, and these are what the frequencies of their sound are and what like levels of frequencies you hear them at. So this person's hearing loss, you can vaguely see the banana in the background. That's where all the speech sounds lie. So wherever their hearing loss is, this person's is here, so about 30. So they can hear the sounds from here and below. But the ones that are above that line, they're missing those sounds whenever you're speaking with them. So I wanted to show you an example of what that looks like in sentence form. If I said, have a seat, this person with a mild loss might miss that s sound for seat. How are you today? They would hear that one just fine. What did you do over the weekend? What did you do over weekend? So they would miss that k in weekend, and they might misinterpret and not understand what exactly you're saying, but they'll hear that you're talking to them. And the same for what are you doing, they'll hear that one. So I wanted to show you, this is actually a audiogram for one of my students. So I wanted to show you a real life application of what one of my students hears when I'm speaking with them. And I even used the speech banana, and I marked where their hearing loss lies on that speech banana chart. So they hear the sounds that are from here down, but they don't hear those sounds that are here and up when they're unaided. So if those hearing aids are off and their batteries are dead, this is what it looks like when you say those phrases I had before. So they're missing all these sounds. This is why if you have a student that's unaided, or they maybe need that sign language support because their hearing aids might not fill in all of those missing sounds. That's why sometimes I tell teachers, yes, they do hear you. They might look your direction, know there's a sound, but are they understanding you? Because all of those sounds that are like the highest on that speech banana are the consonants. You need those consonants to understand a message. Because we can see these are just all vowels. You guys have any questions about that? So some implications that I thought of for rehab counseling is one way that you can build rapport with your clients if they are deaf or hard of hearing. Maybe we can bring that banana to a session and say, bring their audiogram with them, and they can graph their own, see where those sounds are that they can and can't hear, and they can bring that to their employers and advocate for themselves. Say, hey, I know sometimes you might get frustrated when you're talking to me, and I do hear you, it's just sometimes I don't understand, and this is why. And if you need that extra support like an FM system to amplify those sounds that are really hard for them to hear, that could be some of their proof of, hey, can you get that for me? And they can plug those FM systems into like a computer if they work on a computer all day. If you guys are having meetings and the boss is walking around turning around like this and they can't see your mouth and they're not getting all those visual cues on your lips to try to like fully get your message, say, hey, can you just wear this FM system for me? I did show you that some of these speech sounds are a little hard for me to hear. Yes. Yes. Mhm. Mhm. So. Yes. That takes a lot of communication with the teachers, diagnosticians, when any rehab counselors come through and they talk about their transitional services. Sometimes we have to go into depth about that, but we don't have that time that I do right now to explain it to you. So sometimes it just gets swept under the rug. They say, oh, you have a hearing loss, you wear hearing aids, you're good, right? But it's not always that way. So this is something great. Well, if you look over here, so that N and that O, you might be over here. Yes. No. Any more comments?
Well, where these are laws for the older person? Where would we expect the laws for the older person?
What, elderly people or just like? Rephrase. Dr. Ware, you should have given me your audiogram. We could have just used yours.
So they're not a typical area where you'll see the laws on the old and the firm.
No. It really just depends because every individual student, I can tell you out of the 40 some odd students in our program, none of their audiograms look the same. You would not be able just to, oh, this one like looks the same as this one, so we can do the same types of activities, right? No. I wish life was that easy, but it's not. So you just have to work with your student, understand how well they use their aiding devices, how well they use their lip reading skills, and we just work with them on what they're most skilled at. Which brings me to assistive technologies. Something that I work with yes ma'am. No question is stupid. That is most hearing losses, actually. If there is background noise, then it will be harder for them to pick out the speaker's voice and discriminate it from that background noise. Yes. And then that's just that extra distraction of I have to focus on that one thing that's coming out of this person's mouth, that sound. So a lot of our students have the accommodation to decrease background noises, decrease distractions, because they might be looking around and they'll miss the reading lips, that support. Or if there's too much noise happening in the classroom, the teacher needs to know, hey, can you guys quiet it down? I'm giving instruction. I don't want them to miss this important information. So that's kind of ways that we do that in the classroom. But in the workplace, that might be a little bit harder to have one of your deaf and hard of hearing clients say, hey, I'm deaf and hard of hearing. Can you guys stop? Like, stop your talking, right? Like, you're going to be that rude guy at work. So this is where these might come in handy. If they have that experience with these, or maybe if you want to introduce this to them, that'd be a good idea. And I work with these every single day. Sometimes they're a hassle, and sometimes they are wonderful and amazing. So
Foreign things, I'm getting it from a description of my student. Like foreign things and like an amplifier, what's with that? She's embarrassed. She doesn't want to use that at all. She says it's just like this big amp thing, and then she has like a foreign thing that she hears the instruction from her teacher through the amp or something like that. And I'm like, what's with that? I don't see a picture of that.
I have other pictures that might be what you're describing. We do have something called sound fields. Did I list that? I didn't put that one on there. And it's a speaker. And the ones that we have in our program is that the teacher wears something kind of like this. And it works to, like, it Bluetooths to the speaker, and it just projects it. But our students that use those don't have a horn. It might be.
Or maybe she's exaggerating and saying her last hearing aid was like a horn. I don't know. I didn't know if it was literal. I should ask more questions. But yeah, it was just that I thought it was an awkward amplifier. She said, I'm just saying it's embarrassing because everybody knows and people accommodations and all that crazy. So I was just saying, couldn't there be something smaller? So that's why.
There is. I was going to say, if you want to ask me afterwards, I can give you some information about smaller, more subtle devices that aren't embarrassing, because especially working with adolescent children, they are starting to get embarrassed of their hearing aids, their devices, the things they need to use, and their accommodations in the classroom.
Explaining the girl, she has another condition of the secondary hearing loss. The hearing loss is secondary because I would be working with her. I would transfer her. But she has a physical disability where she can't have it, like it keeps on falling out her ears or something, and then like she has something in her head and sometimes it doesn't register. So she has a lot going on.
It sounds like a bone conductor.
Anyways, that's why she needs the amplifier. Things keep on falling out her head.
Okay. I will talk to you.
I'm explaining it very well.
I can talk to you after about that one. Some of the systems and brands that I work with and know mostly about them, they keep making new and new devices and pieces to add to it, and I just play with it and learn as I go. So we work with Oticon and Phonak, and the devices look something like this, and they will plug into your hearing aids. So this isn't an FM device, this is an actual hearing aid. And these are called receivers, and these are the ones that connect to the hearing aid, and it Bluetooths what you say into their hearing aid, kind of like headphones. So if I was wearing, this feels like I'm wearing an FM right now. So if I was walking around and I was talking, they could walk in the other room, these are how far these things go, and they could hear me just talking to them, having a conversation, and they might not be able to talk back to me because I'm not wearing anything that's amplifying their sound back to me, but they can hear everything they say. And whenever we're testing this, usually I make them walk back in the room and answer a question that I asked them while they were outside the door, just to make sure it was working. So this is the part that our teachers wear, and it has the microphone, and that's the part that you'll speak into. So this is something that if you wanted to bring it to work and you had your own personal device, you could ask your boss, hey, can you clip this on your belt and then just wear the little speaker so I can hear you more clearly? And that would help with that background noise that you guys were talking about earlier, because then it goes directly into their ear, and it's like you're listening to them through headphones. Like if you have your headphones plugged into your phone, you just want to listen to music, it would be kind of like that. So these are the type that I'm familiar with and work with most of the time. This is that sound field I was talking about. We mostly use this in an elementary setting because, like you said, it was embarrassing for her to have that. So we try to wean them off of those and try to use some of the other things as we get older in adolescent stages. But some of them, if they're proud of their hearing loss, they don't care anybody knows, then we'll use those in those classrooms. And that's something that you could use in a meeting, like they could ask their boss to use that too, because I'm sure all the other employees might need to have it a little bit louder so that they don't start doodling, and so they'll pay attention too. So some teachers like this because then every kid benefits, not just a deaf and hard of hearing person. You can assume that is expensive, yes. This is very expensive equipment, but our students are very familiar with it. For regional day school programs, we always have funding available for this. So having that knowledge, that might be scary, like, oh, do we need to help our clients find that money or figure out how to get these types of things? But they are coming out with more and more personal devices that are coming with hearing aids and cochlear implants. That I even had some experience with one like a week ago. One of my 10th graders just got one, and we were figuring that thing out for like an hour. And now we both know the ins and outs of it, and that it came with his new cochlear implants. So I think as generations go on and more technology is being created, we might need to familiarize ourselves with these things, because you're going to start getting clients that already have them. And we need to look into it, maybe start just asking them to bring it. Oh, show me, how do you use this? And then you can start thinking of ways that they can use it when they're transitioning. So the pros of these is that they do decrease that background noise and the distractions. It amplifies the important sounds. So for us, they can hear the teacher better. They are really big on doing eye stations now in the classroom. So a lot of your new clients coming in are going to be so used to performing tasks on computers and on technology devices. So knowing how to hook those up and use FM systems with electronics is going to be more important as technology advances. And then this does help with that speech discrimination. So earlier with those speech bananas, as I was telling you, it will amplify your devices, the hearing aids and the FMs will help amplify those sounds. It won't fix their hearing loss. It won't make them hear normally, but it does make those sounds louder so that they can discriminate them better. And they might not miss as many, but it won't be like normal hearing. Because everybody thinks, oh, put a hearing aid on, fixed. You're good to go. You are normal hearing person again, but that is not the case at all. Now, cons of these is that there's a lot of troubleshooting you will need to do. Today, actually, on the way here, I got a phone call from one of my high school students' teachers. He was about to take the STAR test. Yes. And he takes the online STAR test, and his new microphone with his cochlear implant was not working. So, and it is in his accommodations. They need to allow him those headphones, that is his personal headphones, and they couldn't get the device to work. And they had my number, of course. So I had to talk them through it. It was very complicated. The student, he has multiple disabilities, so he has trouble remembering all the steps too. So I had to try to help figure that out. It was an ordeal. So along with that comes with the maintenance. We need to make sure that our clients are aware of how to be careful with their equipment, especially because from my department, I know that we baby them when it comes to their equipment. If they tend to take off their hearing aids, they'll throw them in their backpack, or they'll take off their receivers, just throw them across the table, and we baby them and force them to put them in places, but we need to teach them those independent skills of being responsible with your own equipment, because they grow up with us. All of our students, we have early childhood interventions, so some of our students see us from birth till they graduate from high school. And they're just used to us nagging them like, hey, you need to do this, you need to do this. And then when they come to you guys, they're clueless. They don't know what to do. They're like, where's my mommy? And so we need to teach them those responsibility skills as well. And then maybe help them be less resilient to their technology as they get older. Because I have seen that the younger grades, they get these hearing aids, they have their FMs, it's all brand new, and they're like, oh, this is cool and helpful to me. But then once they become that adolescent age, they're noticing that their friends are making fun of them. They're like, oh, ha, ha, what's that on your ear? And they don't want to use it anymore. And then that causes them to miss out on instruction at that higher grades, and that's causing them to have lower reading levels, which I'm about to talk about. And that cons, like you were talking about, the price is very expensive. Each receiver, the ones that hook on to the hearing aids, $600 each. And then the microphone, that's roughly $1,000. So I always tell them when they carry it around, this is precious cargo. Do not lose it. We've had some last, like, at least a decade. But we make sure we have warranties on them, and we keep track of all of that and all that maintenance. We have books on books of keeping track of all that maintenance. And then we keep close contact with like all the companies like Oticon, Phonak. They know us by name. We have an account, and they're like, oh, yes, you're the regional day school program in Nacogdoches. Okay, we'll send you that. And then they even offer us some of their newer technologies to try out, and that's pretty cool. So we keep those good connections. So I already kind of talked about these things. To just try to familiarize yourself with these types of products. Maybe if one of your client has one, say, hey, can we try it out in a session? Can I wear it while we talk and do some activities? I think that would be helpful. Explaining how this can be used in the workplace, like I had discussed. Ask your supervisor, your boss, hey, when we have meetings, can you wear this? It's going to help me understand you better. If you go into an interview, you can even tell them, seeing that confidence of, hey, can you wear this? That whenever they're having an interview, I would be impressed. Like, oh, you just advocated for yourself so well. You have a lot of like spunk. Then likely to hire you if you're just like, here, take this thing. I need it. That's how I feel. If someone came up to me, I would say, you're hired because you have no shame. These can also be used in post-secondary placements. Like, I know I have friends at SFA with cochlear implants. They have that mini mic that I was talking to you about that my student has. She will turn it on, put it on her desk, and just sit through lecture. Because, in a college classroom, it's usually a lot less rowdy, not as much background noise. And if they already have that habit of sitting towards the front near the speaker, they put that microphone there, then it's just going to put them straight into their ear and right into that device. So talking about using it in those situations, or when you go to tutoring, because I know SFA offers free tutoring on campus, they can take it there. They can even use it in small groups. It's really beneficial. And I'm already working with my students with, hey, if you have group assignments, you get put into different places in the classroom, go ahead and ask your teacher, hey, can I have the microphone? I want to use it with my group. So I'm trying to teach them those independent skills, but I'm having to reinforce it a lot. So you can do this as well.
Are you going to come back to that one?
Do you have questions about cochlear implants? Okay.
Could the employer or folks expect the person using the cochlear implant for the hearing to be successful from the standpoint of understanding what's going on?
What do you mean?
The use of the cochlear implant could, from the standpoint of the effectiveness of the cochlear implant.
The effectiveness of a cochlear implant it varies upon the person. I know people who've been aided, they tried it, they had a lot of sensitivity to it, and they just did not like it. They preferred signing, and that is A-okay. And I fully support that. If it makes you uncomfortable, that's like if you sat in a room and if you sat in a rock concert all day during instruction, you're just like, oh, my head is banging. So I would support them on that. But I do have students who they love it. They love their device. If it shuts off, then they get upset. So it really just depends on the person, but I wouldn't push it on them because that is a touchy subject, especially with deaf culture, and some deaf and hard of hearing people don't want cochlears. They pride themselves for being deaf, so I don't think we should dip into that culture and try to force them to do anything, definitely. Yes. Yes. Yeah, I do have it planned, but I can go ahead and talk about it. Was that your question too? Anybody else? Was that your question too? I mean, they could also talk about it. They are. Deaf culture is, I read into it, I've been in it, I've been out of it, tried to include myself in it. Sometimes you get kicked out, sometimes you're welcomed. I think they'll agree by their head nods. And deaf culture is deaf and hard of hearing individuals that is so hard. It's just like a very vague concept. Like there's groups in the culture. So you'll have what is called Big D deaf, and that's deaf people who are very, very prideful of their deafness, and they don't want to, for lack of a better word, fix their hearing loss. They want to sign. They want to interact with other deaf and hard of hearing people, and they want to socialize with each other. And if somebody tries to force aids on them, then they're like, no, I like me as I am. I am this person. This is my identity. That's with any culture anyway, especially with all the diversity. You don't want to, I'm not the same as everybody else, right? I am me. And there's also little d deaf. They're more open to trying those types of devices. If I need a hearing aid, it's going to benefit me, and you say it will, I'll try it. They're not having that negative, I don't want to try that, get that out of here. That's the best I can kind of explain it with the little time that I have. But does that make a little bit more sense? Okay. I'm going to talk about available resources. So first thing I want to talk about is interpreters. I think it is very, 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 very important to talk to your clients about where to find interpreters, what proficiency level of interpreter you need, and when to ask and how to request them. Because I know with our students, in most RDSPDs, we provide them for them. So if they're going to an event, we're like, our students are going, we need an interpreter there. So they're just used to having that interpreter follow them around, but now they're in the real world and they show up somewhere not understanding what's happening, no one's signing it for them, and they're probably thinking, well, why didn't an interpreter follow me here like usual? And that's because they don't have those independent skills of requesting an interpreter, knowing where to find that interpreter, especially if they go to college in a completely different town. Because in Nacogdoches, Texas, there's one agency for you to choose from. So they know, that's my guy, that's my interpreter. But when they get out there in the community, like where do they contact an interpreter? Who's out there? What's there for them? So we need to be able to tell them those things. Huh? Aren't they? Yes. Love letters. So hint everybody, send love letters. Something that we have incorporated into the program that I'm a part of is a certified captionist, which I think is really, really cool. One of our students benefits, one of our high school students benefits more from having what the teacher is saying typed out, and it projects onto his iPad. So we have a signing aide who is a certified captionist. She sits in the back of the classroom, she types what the teacher is saying, and it pops up on his iPad and he reads along as the lecture's going. And it's like real time happening right there. And that's something that I think we should look into for post-secondary options. Say, is where you're going, do they have a captionist available? And if they do, and if that's what you're used to, let's look into that. Let's see how you can get one. Video relay. I think as things like Facebook Messenger, Snapchat, Skype, FaceTime, as all of those things become more popular in the younger cultures, and everybody has an iPhone or a smartphone, then they start using those instead of understanding the video relay and how to use that. So I know that in our program, our high school teacher that is there with our students on the campus, she does show them the video relay, but I want us to maybe work on trying to use this themselves, because I know that we're there, we're hovering over them, and they're depending on us to click the button. They're telling us, oh, well, this is what I want to say, but I think we need to show them that this is available to them. If they don't have the funds to have a smartphone, or if there's not a computer available to them, then they need to know how to use this video relay. And with the captionist, that kind of ties me into this accommodations part. A lot of our students sometimes will forget what their accommodations were in the classrooms. So whenever they need to move over into college and you ask them, well, what were your accommodations? They're like, I don't remember. So you have to pick at them. You need to ask them, maybe have a list of accommodations that are common for deaf and hard of hearing people, or even just in special ed, and just go through them. Say, hey, did you get a copy of class notes? Did you have to have tests read aloud to you? Just go through all those things and see what can transfer over into their post-secondary settings, whatever they're choosing to do. And these were here to remind me about that video relay. So FaceTime and Skype, amazing for the deaf culture, because they can just call you up and they can sign at you on a phone. But like way back when, they had to walk, knock on doors. If your friend was there, you had a chit chat. If not, you didn't know how to get a hold of them beforehand. So before telephones, it was a lot harder. But now we have these awesome things where you don't even have to walk over and talk to them. You can just do it on your couch. You guys can sign to each other. So if they're not familiar with those things, maybe show them how to use them. And if you're not familiar, maybe look into them later.
Is staff supported in your community, captioning for landline telephones?
The video relay?
No, it's not video. It's caption. It's a caption phone. It's not video.
Caption phones are probably with the phone companies. Is that what you're talking about?
Well, DHS here in the Galveston area provides free staff phones for people that qualify that need assistance when you're getting a phone call from someone else and it prints out what the other person is saying and they have to read it and then they'll pause for a minute before they answer you back. But it's a landline phone. It can't be supported on cell.
I have not heard of anyone having that available to them. So that's probably something that they don't even know exists in the East Texas area.
Well, that's what I was wondering.
Yeah.
How many landlines there were and things like that.
Or maybe I just am lucky enough to work with a lot of smartphone users. Because I don't know anybody that uses landline. Do they?
I think the last one I saw, as far as the relay phone,
Mhm.
was through the Hard of Hearing Services out of Tyler, and I'm not
Yeah.
sure that they're there anymore. But you're correct; it would what the person was saying would appear on the screen.
I haven't seen one in Nacogdoches. Have you seen one in Nacogdoches?
I think there's one in Dr. Job's office.
I haven't had anybody use that.
Okay.
So,
But it's another option for them, and I would go through Department of Health and Human Services, deaf and hard of hearing, because they stayed with DHS rather
Mhm.
than come with ours over to TWC.
oh,
They used to be part of our program, and they do provide much of the equipment that you're talking about, to support people at work.
who provides that? What'd you say?
Department of, DHS, Health and Human Services.
They do they give it to students in schools?
They can.
Okay.
But, most of the students, we don't have like just a deaf program, because our kids are almost all integrated.
Mhm.
And so they have individual equipment, but most of them use, like you do, the loop.
Mhm.
With the, equipment up front for the teacher to speak into.
Mhm.
But this is for mostly home use, safety use, to be able to get communications from emergency management to say there's a tornado in your area, there's, wildfire coming, that kind of thing. It rings and it gives them the information in print.
I think because those have been used for so long, I think people are starting to adapt to the smartphones, because everything you said, like, oh, there's a weather warning, your iPhone vibrates about 700 times a minute. When that happens, they might use that. But so I think most of the people that I work with have moved into that, and that's why I didn't know about it. But yes, that is awesome. Now I know about that.
I have something to add. What she's referring to is the CapTel phone. So yeah, if you have, yes, so, in Houston, we have a person by the name of Christina Holmes, and she is a provider of free CapTel phones for the deaf and hard of hearing in the community. It's not a STAT program, but those phones are
I'm gonna ask her.
You know what, I can't remember right now, but it could be wireless, I'm not sure, I have to look into that, see if they provide wireless.
Yeah, because it sounds like that's a landline, and I don't.
They're landlines, as far as I know.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's like a, you know, it's not a cell phone, it's one of those phones that you just have stationary and the messages come through and you read them. They're for deaf and hard of hearing people who can speak. So they would speak into the phone, and although they can't hear the person who's speaking, what that person responds will be there on a screen so they can read it and caption it. And it's also for kids.
I might ask you later about that for some of my high school students. Okay. Implications for helping request interpreters. So I did a little bit of research on things that would be useful for you all to know in regards to interpreters. So there are proficiency levels of interpreting. A while back, actually not too long ago back, there were 5 proficiency levels, and it was 1 through 5, and that was the levels of interpreting, and that was like your skill and your level of interpreting. Now they have switched that, and there are 3 levels of proficiency. There's basic, advanced, and master. So if you are going to be sending deaf and hard of hearing clients who depend on using sign language, then you need to let them know that they need to use an advanced level or higher interpreter if they are going to be doing things such as on-the-job training, counseling, diagnostic evaluations, workshops, and group meetings. Now, if they are going to be doing things like basic job readiness, going to interviews or tutoring, then they can search for a basic level or higher. But I think this is very important for you to know because the skill level of each interpreter is very different. They have to go through particular tests, they have to know certain, they have to have certain sign skills, and you need to provide the best language support that they can get in those types of situations. And this is copy paste this into your brain because we don't want to send a basic level interpreter with somebody if they're going to get a diagnostic evaluation. They might misinterpret some information that's happening from the client, between the client, the interpreter, and then to the doctor. And the doctor might diagnose them with something that they do not have just because they didn't understand what they were saying. So as I said earlier, with all those expensive things that we were talking about, consider the socioeconomic status of your clients. That video relay she was talking about, that's free. Good option if your clients cannot afford to have smartphones or they can't meet their payments for their phone bill on time and they need to have that landline. That's something to consider for that. Some quick, easy, free options if you do have a phone. Contacting people through that Facebook Messenger. I feel like this is a good way nowadays to start networking and talking to people using your signs. Skype, Snapchat, FaceTime. And then I really want to focus on the training them to use the video relay, help them understand how that works. I have a picture right here of them signing to each other, and then he's speaking to the other person on the other side of the phone, to that hearing person. All right, right here I have a graph of the students that I have right now who are of adolescent age in grades. These are their reading levels. So my 6th graders, I have 3 of them. They read roughly 3rd, almost to 4th grade. My 7th grader reads at a 3rd grade level. My 8th grade student between 3rd and 4th. I do have one outlier friend who is an overachiever. He's in 9th grade reads at an 8th grade level. And then my 3 10th graders, one reads at a 4th, another reads in 3rd, and the last one reads at a 5th grade level. So I've read many studies, many books, attended many classes in my undergrad that have stated when deaf and hard of hearing students graduate, they tend to have a reading level between 3rd and 4th grade, and I'm seeing that with my students as I'm teaching them. So most of them are reading 3 or more grade levels below where they're at, excluding my one outlier. And so my personal experience have shown that those are true. And I'm going to talk a little bit about why. So 90% of deaf and hard of hearing children are born to hearing parents. So when this happens, the initial response of the parent is, I need to fix my child. I don't know sign language. I don't know how to communicate with them. I need to fix them right now. So they'll go to things like cochlear implants. They'll search for hearing aids, send them to speech therapy, try to force them into lip reading and using oral communication when that's not the best option for them. And these are not always successful. And a lot of my students are also born into Hispanic families that speak only Spanish. So they hear Spanish at home, they're hard of hearing or deaf, and they're trying to learn English in school. So all of these things are coming into factor. What do I speak when? How do I read English if my parents can't help me read it? How do I speak English if my parents can't help me speak that English? There's just a lot of things going on that's bringing that reading level down. No, I didn't break it down into that. This is, let me think. I have one child who speaks Quran. He's from Asia. In 6th grade, yes. English, Quran. It's called Quran. They're from Asia. Burmese. The country is Burmese. And 7th grader. Okay. Spanish. There we go. So there's like a mix of English, Burmese, and Spanish speakers. So we work with it all. Wait, did I go through this? Yes. All right, so the reason why their reading levels are so low is caused by these communication barriers. There is a limited use of sign language universally. So, we do have to go out, and sometimes it's hard to find interpreters even. And so, I'm all for it. We need more sign language. Misinterpretations will happen. So, like I talked about earlier with that speech banana, they might not get fully what you're saying. Or if you're trying to make them lip read and they're profoundly deaf, then they might not understand what you're saying just by trying to read your lips. Have you guys ever seen those bad lip reading videos online with like the NFL? And they like mock, they try to guess what the NFL players are saying. And it's like tambourine, tambourine, tambourine. He's probably not saying tambourine, but so I think of those things when we're saying, well, just read my lips, you'll be fine. You're not going to be fine. This is something that I see very often, the loss of incidental learning, which that's something like overheard conversations with your peers. Somebody might be talking about something that happened in the news last night, and now you have me and Dr. Weber talking about the news, and if I'm a hearing person, I overhear it, I'm like, oh, I kind of want to be included in this, and we start talking. We're introducing new vocabulary to each other, giving each other our different opinions on things. And so we're both working together and we're increasing our vocabulary level. We're understanding one another. We're learning how to communicate with peers appropriately. Now, deaf and hard of hearing people may not hear these incidental conversations and jump in and get that extra vocabulary and get the modeling of the vocabulary, how to speak with others appropriately. So those are some things to think about. Maybe they haven't learned those skills of how to have that back and forth and learn those incidental vocabulary, that some words that you'll say and they're like, well, what does that mean? And you may use it every day, but they don't because they don't overhear it. I thought of some psychosocial implications for you. Maybe trying to help them feel more comfortable with their hearing devices, because as they get older, I have taken some students on field trips. They'll put their hoodie on and walk around. Like, I don't want these people to see that I'm hard of hearing. I don't want them to know that I have hearing aids. And I have one that sometimes he'll rip out his cochlear implant and just stick it in his pocket, walk around like he's like, oh, I'm cool. I'm like all of the rest of you. But then he can't hear what's going on, and he's going to miss instruction. But yes, I think we need to try to teach them to be proud of themselves and who they are. So I think teaching them to self-advocate for themselves and doing some of these activities that I talked about might help them with that. Especially if you show them how much you know about it, then they'll probably think it's more natural. They'll say, oh, you know about that stuff? Like, yeah, I see people like you all the time. And they'll be like, oh, so I'm not alone. Because in rural areas, they feel alone, which is why we have we call it a pen pal activity, where all of our kids will write to each other, and at the end of the year, they come together and they see one another and they socialize with each other to bring them together in that culture. So with that, discuss their history of hearing loss. Why do you feel ashamed? Why are you trying to hide it from me? Because I have another student, he'll lie to me and say, oh, I don't have my hearing aid today. And we'll start working with our activity, and I see him slide his hand into his backpack, and then he closes the battery door, and I hear it squealing. You know, he can't hear it squealing, but I can. And he slips it in like he's all slick, and then we'll start working together. So maybe ask them, well, what caused you to be kind of ashamed of that? Why do you feel that way? Kind of break that barrier for them. And I've overheard their parents say, like, hey, when we go to church, make sure you don't wear your hearing aids. I don't want Aunt so-and-so knowing that you have those. So be aware that those things do happen. So they talk to them about it, and maybe that's the reason why they feel that way, and they want to hide it. And just tell them it's okay, and give them ways to feel more accepting of themselves. What does it say? What methods are most beneficial to meet these needs? Oh, yes. So we need to talk to them about what is the most beneficial services for them, because not all deaf and hard of hearing people know sign language. Some of them have their implants and they're okay with just that. Some of them have hearing aids, they're okay with just that. But some of them may need sign support. And with that, we need to ask them, what kind of sign do you tend to use? Because there's a lot of different sign languages. I don't know if you guys all know that there's a various amount of sign languages, but they're not all the same. So there's American Sign Language, there's Signed English, there's two different kinds of Signed English also. There's one that's conceptually correct and then one that's not conceptually correct. Do you guys know what that means? Okay. No? Okay. So for example, if I were to tell you that I saw a butterfly, if this was conceptually correct, I would tell you I saw a butterfly. But if it was not conceptually correct, I would say I saw a butterfly. So like this is butter, like the butter that you eat, and this is fly, like fly away, but this is butterfly. So some kids, believe it or not, will have grown up with the non-conceptually correct ones just to help them read word for word. So we need to know that if they did use that resource, because if they have an interpreter and they're not breaking it down like that, they might not benefit from it. So have that conversation. What type of sign do you use? What kind of supports do you use? Do you like to read lips to help you? Do you just use like do you just speak orally? Do you sign and speak at the same time? There's a lot to go into it. Just ask them. They'll tell you.
Our 1-year-old granddaughter thinks easy words, but she does know how to sign her milk, water, and one of the most important one, she wants more food.
Yes.
Yes, that question.
Yes. My niece knows more. She's learning sign, she's learning Spanish and English from my brother and his wife, and she'll more. Or agua for water.
Do you know of any places that will teach sign language, or if they're going to charge for students?
I have some students that I teach sign language to, if their parents have requested it, because a lot of the students in my program have a progressive loss, so they will eventually become profoundly deaf. So their parents have requested that I teach them now. And we used to have free signing classes, but we didn't have a very good rate of people to show up. I would ask your local RDSPDs if they offer that resource, because some of them do, because some of them have parents that do want to learn and they are involved and that they really want to do it. So, regional day school program for the deaf. Mm-hmm. It really depends on the area and what's available. I know that we don't have anyone to offer that sign class right now, but we did. And if somebody were to request it, if there were a group of parents that came up to us, we would say, yes, we are glad to teach you. Like, we really want them to come. And we even offer free sign classes during the school year for parents who request. So we will go out to the home once a month, and they will give us a list of signs they want to know to use with their children. And then we'll go over, bring some activities, things for them to learn by themselves, and then some activities to do with their kids, kind of get that back and forth with their own family. And that's just our program, I know, does that upon request. And then we used to offer the summer program, but we just weren't getting anybody to sign up. So I would ask the local day school programs for the deaf if they offer that, because sometimes they do. And in bigger areas, they're most likely to have that resource. And someone mentioned, like, a college student. Who said that? Did someone mention that a college level student did that? Yes. Oh, she asked 4 classes? Oh, okay. I think if you ask the day school programs, they would be willing to help somebody in the community as well. So I don't see a harm in asking. Cool. And then if they don't offer that, ask them to do it.
Malia, did you have any students participate this last summer in the Learning Run in the East Texas area?
Did we do that last year?
Or getting work experience?
No, we didn't this year.
Okay.
I think we have in the past. That was before my time, though.
Certainly.
They did in the past. I remember them talking about it, but none of my students have done that.
Did they talk about the kinds of problems your youngsters ran into when they were in those summer jobs?
Mm-mm.
No? Okay.
My supervisor hasn't mentioned any.
Students working part-time now, maybe after school?
Yes, I have a student who is working. What is it called? The storage units. He cleans out storage units, but he's really interested in what he told me was working with people who want help, and he specifically said old people. He said, "I love talking to old people." So, and he's looking for a job. So,
Looking for a job
yeah, for the summer.
for the summer.
Mhm.
And he's cleaning out storage units now
Mhm.
for an employer, part-time, full-time?
Part-time, just on weekends. So, but yes, they are going out there. We're pushing them. Try anything you can. So some things to think about when they're leaving school, that they have had the same if they're part of a deaf education program, they've probably had the same teachers, seen a lot of the same faces, and gotten really comfortable and dependent on these people since kindergarten. And like I said, we have an ECI program where we work with birth all the way until they graduate. So some of them have even seen us since they were not even 1 year old yet. So we need to help them with those independent living skills. Talk to them about, how do you feel that you're away from all those teachers that were so helpful to you once upon a time, and help them with ways of getting more comfortable with others, trusting other adults, not just coming back to it. We have some that have come back to us and asked to help them sign up for classes, and we tell them, go to your advisor. That's what they're for, not me. So telling them who they need to go to when they have these questions, because we don't want to see them back. We already let them go. Oh, yes. This is something that one of my fellow teachers asked me to talk about a little bit, just to mention. To be sure, whenever rehab counselors come to the schools and talk to the students about their transition, make sure they understand what you're talking about and not just saying yes. Because once you leave that door, they're going to look at us and say, what? What were they talking about? So you need to make sure, emphasize, are you sure you understand? Because I'm here, I have the answers. Your teacher doesn't have the answers that I have. Like I am the one who has all the knowledge of your transition, but your teacher just knows you for now. So that's something that we have some trouble with our adolescent students before they move on. And I think it will be really helpful to them to show visuals of things that they can do with their post-secondary options. Because sometimes they'll think, oh yeah, I want to be a mechanic. But maybe you need to show them what that looks like. Maybe their definition of being a mechanic isn't exactly what all it entails. Talk to them about different courses they're going to need, because if they're not very good at math, they're not very good at, like doing that hands-on stuff, they might not need that job. So just really explore those options. And one thing I thought about was doing virtual field trips, which is something that's new in education that we've started implementing. And I think that'd be beneficial in the rehab setting too, because you can do virtual field trips with job opportunities. So show them, what does it look like a day in the life of a math teacher, a day in the life of a rehab counselor, different things like that. Or take them on a real field trip. Oh no. Virtual field trips is like, you can look up a video online and someone has like a camera and they're like showing you what's happening on that job. So they don't have to wear anything. It's just you can find a video, click on it, and they'll project. Like somebody recorded like a live event at the zoo. That's a virtual reality, yes. Yeah, you just want them to wear those cool glasses. It is. It is. That would be really cool. That's a lot of money. You don't think those glasses? Oh, are you saying like wear some glasses that have a thing you can put your phone on?
Yeah, they have they're about $10.
Oh, yes. No, yeah, you can do that. Sure. Pull up a video on your phone, put it on there, and say, all right, this is what it's going to be like whenever you're a nurse. Really show them. That's a good idea. I like that. I'm going to do that with one of mine. I'm going to show them what it's like to work with old people. All right. I had talked. I was just quoting my student, guys. That's not my words. That was him. So I had some requests for teachers for me to inform you. I was told to familiarize yourself with deaf culture whenever you work with deaf and hard of hearing people. Ways I thought about you trying to do that is just exposing yourself to it. Maybe before you jump into it, read about it a little bit, see what you're about to get into, and just socialize with deaf people. Just try your hardest. Throw yourself into a situation. I've looked online. You can search deaf socials, and people post their events all the time. And like deaf people in different towns and cities, they plan these events to get together and just hang out with each other. I know there's a group in Dallas. They try to do it once a month, and I'm a part of their Facebook group. So if I have the opportunity to go out and hang out with them, I'll do that. So you can even look on Facebook, look for Deaf Social in your area, and then you can go. I'm sure if you ask somebody or if you just show up, they'll be happy to talk to you. They'll be happy that you showed up and you want to learn about deaf culture. And I'm sure that there will be someone there who is oral and can maybe, help you talk to somebody else who's fully deaf and maybe sign for you, and then you guys can have some conversations. I think that could be a friendly way of getting some exposure. I was also told, make sure you're making eye contact with the student when you talk to them, not the interpreter. I know that I was taught that's just common courtesy, but not everybody knows that. So I was told to make sure everybody does know that. So if you go to a school and you meet with that student and talk about transition services, talk to them, not the interpreter. So they may be looking at the interpreter, but you still need to look at them when you're speaking. I was also told, check in with local schools. I've had teachers say that they've had issues getting in contact with like TWC reps. Whenever it was DARS, they said that they didn't know who their reps were. Who are they supposed to call? They said that they would see them one time and then they'd just disappear, and they didn't know how to get back in contact and if they had questions. So they were just saying like, hey, familiarize yourself, maybe just check in with schools and see if there's anything you need or if they have any questions, because I'm sure we can think of something to ask you, most definitely. Dr. Weber had talked about how it's really, really hard to get parents involved, and he asked me if I had any tips and tricks, which I don't really have any tips and tricks. I was going to ask you guys if you did, but it is very hard to get parents involved, especially if they have that negative attitude, like I mentioned earlier. They said, hey, hide your hearing aids from Aunt Sally. We don't want her knowing that you have a hearing loss. So I think one way that just to encourage them is just keep bugging them. Because sometimes when I keep bugging a parent, they finally show up. So just keep that persistence, keep trying, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. We have tried making, we have a social every year where the parents come and we make the parents mingle with each other. So we'll do like a non-invasive game, kind of like something to get them a little bit competitive, but they don't have to talk too much to each other. And then it kind of gets them to realize, okay, I'm not alone in this either. All these other people have children with hearing loss, and we can talk about problems and things that we can do and resources together, and maybe that'll help them feel more included. But for you guys, what I can think of is just keep trying, never give up. That took a long time, I'm sorry. Thank you. Any questions, friends? You guys asked a lot while we were going, so. Thanks.
Thank you. Very good, guys. It looks like we have a break. Oops, thank you. I have Mr. Sean Jackson is here. Would you be interested in a 10-minute break? And actually, we're running about 10 minutes early, so if we take a 10-minute break, maybe we can get out 10 minutes earlier. Would that work for you? Okay, very good. So let's take about a 10-minute break. Also, Dee has the certificates for the first 2 sessions for this morning, and we'll take care of that as well. In fact, you can pick them up right here at the desk if you like. If you want to give them the certificates for the first 2 sessions. Very good. We'll see you back in about 10 minutes. Also, we have Cokes in the cooler in the back. Cokes, Sprite, and
Yeah,
system for you.
yeah, you gotta just put it in here.
Yeah, I can load it on the system.
It must be on the back. Huh? Or just put on the system. Well, let me show you. I gotta navigate to it.
Sir?
I need to navigate to it.
Oh, you do? Okay. You want to just plug it in here?
Maybe,
on the,
yeah.
No, right there on the side.
I think you've got something in that slot.
Yeah, it's kind of a.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
That's really cool. That's fancy.
And we'll make it out of here. And just a minute. Let me turn the Nato